This hour with some breaking news out of the White House just minutes ago. President Trump blasting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy in a social media post after Zelenskyy declared that Ukraine will not cede control of Crimea to Russia. The president posted in part, the statements made by Zelenskyy today will do nothing but prolong the killing field, and nobody wants that. We are very close to a deal, but the man with no cards to play should now finally get it done. All right, let's turn now to CBS News White House reporter Aaron Navarro. Aaron, what do the president's words mean for the prospects of a ceasefire in this?
Liz, good to be with you. Well, it's another checkpoint in what has been a pretty turbulent path to peace that President Trump is looking to achieve between Russia and Ukraine. You've seen two U.S. officials, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, at the 11th hour kind of pull out of talks in London with Ukrainian officials and European officials. And you heard White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that Special Envoy Steve Witkoff will actually be meeting with Vladimir Putin and his officials in Russia in the coming days. But President Trump's post, especially when he said, quote, nobody is asking Zelenskyy to recognize Crimea as a Russian territory. That's kind of in conflict with some of the reporting of a U.S. proposal last week that says one of the concessions potentially for Ukraine is for them to recognize Crimea as Russian territory. So certainly some conflicting messages coming from the White House and Ukraine on this, but as in all, it's kind of reminiscent of that moment earlier this year, and you're showing video of it now, when Zelenskyy was in the Oval Office, when President Trump was really looking to put most of the pressure on Ukraine, and we find ourselves in a similar position today.
And Aaron, the president is also talking about trade with China. We're seeing the markets react. He spoke at a brief question and answer session with reporters at the White House just a short time ago. Here's what he had to say.
We have a lot of action going on. We're making a lot of money, this country. This country is not going to be losing money on trade anymore. We were losing $2 trillion a year on trade. Now we're going to be making money, a lot of money. So that's very good. Every country wants to partake, even countries that have ripped us off for many, many years. China is an example, but it's not just China. European Union, they ripped us off for many, many years, and those days are over. We're going to make a lot of money for our people. We'll be able to lower taxes substantially, and we're going to be proud of ourselves.
Aaron, give us some context to what the president just said right there.
Yeah, the president was asked if there are any direct talks yet between U.S. and China. He seemed to sidestep it, kind of talking broadly that there are negotiations happening with plenty of countries, and this was a similar posture that the White House had yesterday when asked if President Xi and President Trump were actually talking on the phone. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt declined to confirm or comment on that. It also comes a day after there were reports of Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent saying that the current trade war between the U.S. and China in regards to tariffs is, quote, unsustainable. Both he and President Trump teased potentially lowering those tariffs, which caused a spike in the stock market. But today, the White House is saying that they are not looking at the U.S. unilaterally lowering tariffs at this point, while at the same time setting the table for talks to at least start in some way between the U.S. and China.
CBS News White House reporter Aaron Navarro at the White House for us today. Thank you so much, Aaron. Good to see you. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent gave remarks to the Institute of International Finance today. He said there's an opportunity for a trade deal between the U.S. and China, but China needs to move away from reliance on American demand. Take a listen.
China in particular is in need of a rebalancing. Recent data shows the Chinese economy tilting even further away from consumption toward manufacturing. China's economic system, with growth driven by manufacturing exports, will continue to create even more serious imbalances with its trading partners if the status quo is allowed to continue.
All right, let's get right to CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady. Kelly, what's the big takeaway from both what the president and the Treasury Secretary had to say today?
Well, Well, I think you can see it reflected in the markets, that there's optimism, that there are trade deals that are potentially in the offing. I mean, we heard Besson say during that same speech, over 100 countries have come to the table with either a willingness to negotiate or proposals. You just heard in your chat with Aaron that, the president is saying that there are negotiations to be had, there are deals. I think, though, my bigger, broader takeaway is that there are no concrete deals. And that is really what, I don't care if you're an investor or a business or a consumer, that is the certainty that people are looking for. And you saw the market the Dow was up over 1,000 points. We're starting to see a little bit of that optimism fade. Last time I looked, hovering around 500 in terms of a gain. So still a gain, but I think it's good to hear both of those leaders saying the same thing. That's always been something that we're looking for, that they are aligned in that messaging, but still looking for concrete deals. We keep hearing about what countries are coming to the table. What is that deal going to look like, Liz?
And meanwhile, European countries are also reacting to all of that. In fact, the EU just slapped hefty fines on Apple and Meta. What's that about?
So I spoke to a few analysts in the past hour, and some of them are saying that this is a little bit of a tit for tat on the European Union side in the tariff war, because of course these are big American companies, and of the companies that this commission was looking at, they're all American instead of coming from other countries. So specifically, though, Meta, Apple, they're going to have to pay fines combined of over $800 million because they violated the Digital Markets Act. I think that the thing to highlight here is the European Union has always been very hard on tech companies, more so than regulators here. But with the backdrop of this trade war going on, this could be a little bit of, again, a tit for tat, Liz.
All right, we'll keep watching. Kelly O'Grady, thanks so much. All right, let's take a live look now at Vatican City, where Pope Francis is currently lying in state at St. Peter's Basilica ahead of his funeral on Saturday. And thousands of people have been lining up all day long in St. Peter's Square, waiting hours just to enter the basilica to pay their respects to the Pope's open casket. Now, because of this huge turnout, the Vatican says it might keep the basilica open past midnight. And I want you to see this time-lapse video of the faithful waiting to enter St. Peter's Basilica. Catholics already expected in Rome in large numbers for the Easter holiday, but mourners now say they wanted to pay their respects to a pope that they felt very close to.
He's like a member of the family, isn't he? Somebody very close to our hearts, somebody who made the church very accessible to everybody and inclusive to everybody.
There's kind of just a mixture of emotions. I mean, I'm anxious a lot walking in. It's such a surreal place, and it's very holy, and seeing the body and just remembering everything that he stood for is very important.
For this moment, I arrived on Monday for 1 week, and now I had the chance to go there and see the Pope.
I want to bring in CBS News papal contributor Francis Roca, who is live for us in Rome. Francis, what's the overall sentiment from people waiting to see the pontiff in these final days of mourning?
Well, I think there was shock initially. His death wasn't expected to happen all of a sudden from one day to the next. Probably most people thought he would go back into the hospital. But there was a sense, I think, that he was reaching the end. And so there was people were prepared for it. I think you sense that this is a solemn moment, but not perhaps a surprising or a heartbreaking one. People were ready. They watched him visibly age and struggle and admired him for that. And I think you see people here, as we heard, some of them were here as pilgrims or even as tourists already, but have come and are spending, several hours in line. And we spoke to somebody today who had spent 3 hours waiting. What we're not seeing yet is quite the intensity of what happened with John Paul II 20 years ago, where you had people standing in line for 12 hours, and you had, we don't know how many millions of people supposedly came. But in that case, you had a core group of people from Poland, which is not all that far away, who were very intensely devoted to him. And so perhaps in this case, Pope Francis's following is more international, but you are seeing a lot of devotion and a lot of interest in seeing him for the last time.
There was one really very special moving movement where the Pope's casket made its way through the square and the crowd started clapping. How do you think that this Pope Francis, will be remembered among Catholics?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, right now, of course, this is a period of mourning, so some of the controversies that marked his very turbulent reign are not being highlighted, at least by many of the faithful. But I think, some people remember him, I think most Catholics remember him as a very friendly face, as a person who was simple and close to the people. That's certainly the image he projected. Some Catholics who are more, let's say, committed or involved in some of the theological issues in the church on either side see him very differently. Some people, progressives, see him as the great hope for modernizing the church. Conservatives were very uneasy, increasingly uneasy over the course of his 12 years, and now hope that somebody will come in and maybe reaffirm some traditional teachings. There's some anxiety about that.
Part of his legacy, too, was just the modest life that he lived as Pope, and we're seeing that also reflected in how the end of his life as well, now that he's being displayed in this very simple casket, and also his plans for his burial. But I'm curious, with all these world leaders that are going to attend this funeral on Saturday, what are you expecting to see at this Pope's funeral?
Well, as you say, I mean, world leaders are coming, notably President Trump is coming from the United States, but also the President of Germany, the President of France, King of Sweden, on and on, Prince William from the UK, as well as the Prime Minister. So, we remember the last papal funeral we had was 20 years ago. I mean, Pope Benedict was already retired, so it wasn't the same thing as the funeral for a sitting pope, which is what the last time we had that was 20 years ago, and we remember that gathering, almost everybody came except from Russia, the heads of Russia and China, and so it pays tribute to what an enormous world historical figure Pope Francis was.
Francis Roca, live for us in Rome. Thank you so much, Francis. Great to see you. And we will bring you the funeral of Pope Francis on Saturday in a CBS News special report. Coverage begins at 4 a.m. Eastern, 1 a.m. Pacific, on CBS News, and streaming right here on CBS News 24/7 and Paramount Plus. Coming up, a state of emergency over a fast-moving wildfire on the East Coast. Burning right there. It's burning out of control. Stay with us right here on CBS News 24/7. Our monitor is taking us now to New Jersey, where crews are battling a rapidly spreading wildfire right now. This is in Ocean County. That's in the southern part of the state. Let's get to CBS News Philadelphia from just moments ago with new information.
So here's the latest. More than 11,000 acres have burned so far. Only 30% of the fire has been contained. Evacuation orders for surrounding communities have been lifted, but a state of emergency for Ocean County remains in place. We have a team coverage of this effort to contain the flames in Ocean County. Meteorologist Tammy Souza has the latest on the weather conditions. But first, Ray Strickland is live in Chatsworth, Burlington County, where the Forest Fire Service launches its planes and helicopters to fight the fire. He just got an update from firefighters within the last hour. Good afternoon, Ray.
Good afternoon to you, Jim. Officials here in New Jersey say this fire could have been much worse and that they're thankful no lives were lost. But at this hour, the struggle to put out this massive wildfire continues. The amount of acres burned has now exploded to now more than 11,000, with the Forest Fire Service saying only 30% of it is contained. Fortunately, no homes were damaged, according to officials, but they do say at least one commercial property was destroyed. You can take a look at some of this video showing the damage to a door and awning company in Lacey Township. Now, Chopper 3 has been over the fire since it started yesterday morning around 9:45. And to put this all into perspective, fire officials say they found the fire burning just 10 to 20 acres at first, and that it quickly spread due to the dry conditions. Since yesterday, crews have attacked the fire in the air and on the ground, and those efforts will continue today, with officials saying they do expect this fire to burn for at least a couple more days. Those evacuation orders have been lifted, and thousands of residents are now returning to their homes. Also today, the acting governor of New Jersey issued a state of emergency for Ocean County to help with resources. But again, officials say they feel fortunate this fire wasn't worse.
Folks' homes and lives have been saved, and we've truly averted a major disaster. Now, this wildfire is not under full and complete control. We still have a lot of work to do.
Going forward, what's our plan? So our plan is to get people back home, get roads reopened, and knock that smoke down.
And officials also say the work to restore power for some 25,000 people will also be underway today. Also, officials say if this fire continues to spread, which they do expect, this could possibly become the largest wildfire in the state in the past 20 years. Live in Burlington County, Ray Strickland, CBS News, Philadelphia.
This fire got so big, so fast, Jess, and it's really a race against time for these fire crews.
It is. I mean, the boots on the ground, the aircraft in the skies battling these fires. I mean, good thing there's no residents that are actually impacted by this. I mean, yeah, they had the evacuations, but no structures were damaged. It's wild to think, though, that New Jersey is seeing one of the largest fires in over 2 decades right now as we speak. And luckily, the weather conditions are favorable in the sense of the winds, at least. The winds are really light right now. However, they are under drought conditions. There's southern portions of New Jersey, actually, that are under severe drought right now. I want to show you the drought monitor widespread throughout the states. Let's actually head over to the south real fast just to kind of give you a picture. Critical conditions all the way down into areas like New Mexico and all the way along the border of Texas, close to El Paso. But you make your way over into the East Coast. We're not out of the clear just yet either. We're either seeing dry conditions or extreme drought or at least severe drought in some of these communities. Let's actually take a look behind me too. I want to show you just a little bit closer to where that fire is at, what it's looking like and what the conditions are in current time. Now, the Jones Road fire is just close to that coastline, just north of Atlantic City. South of Atlantic City, that's where the the severe weather conditions are, or the severe drought conditions are. And as we take a look at the weather in those communities, relative humidity has already dropped down to 20-25%. It is dry there right now, and it is warm too. We've been dealing with above average temperatures widespread throughout the East Coast this whole week. That's kind of been the big weather story for us. But the good news is they're dealing with light winds. Now we take a look at this weekend's forecast. Winds are expected to ramp up as a rain event is expected to move its way throughout this community, meaning we could see anywhere up to around 1/4 inch of rain. At the same time, we could also get gusty winds moving in from the southwest around 20 miles per hour. So we monitor that closely. Now into the next 6 to 10 days, the West Coast is dealing with drier than normal conditions. Wetter than normal conditions are expected throughout most of the central portions of the states. And back over into where that fire is at, it's near normal currently. This is issued by the Climate Prediction Center. We'll have more on this coming up in just a bit.
Jess, thank you. Opening statements are underway in former movie mogul Harvey Weinstein's rape retrial in New York. The state's highest court last year overturned Weinstein's 2020 conviction after finding the original trial judge allowed prejudicial testimony. CBS News New York's Lisa Rosner reports from outside the courthouse.
Well, Chris, opening statements began just after 11 a.m. Our Alice Gaynor, who is inside the courtroom, says right now prosecutors are going into detail the stories of the 3 accusers in this case. Now, because Harvey Weinstein is in custody for a rape conviction in L.A., he is being brought into the courthouse by officers. We will not see him with our cameras. 73-year-old disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein is being retried on a criminal sex act charge for allegedly forcibly performing oral sex on a production assistant at her apartment in 2006 and a 3rd-degree rape charge for allegedly assaulting an aspiring actor at a Manhattan hotel in 2013. Weinstein looked serious as he was brought in by officers, but he did smile briefly and said, "Good morning, Your Honor," to the judge. Also inside court is Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg and at least one woman who testified at the first trial. Attorney Gloria Allred is also here. Weinstein attorney Arthur Adala also inside, and one of his partners addressed reporters.
Harvey Weinstein is fighting the charges against him, whether it be here in New York or in California. That conviction is up on appeal. We were successful with the appeal here in New York, and we're optimistic about the appeal in LA. What you can take from this is that he has fought from the beginning the charges against him, and he's not stopping.
His attorneys add Weinstein has cancer and he is not in good health. His attorneys are appealing his conviction in California. Now, 2 of the accusers also testified in the first trial. A third one is new, and it is possible that she will be the first to take the stand. She says Weinstein assaulted her at a hotel in 2006. Weinstein has pleaded not guilty in that case. This trial could last 5 to 6 weeks. We're live in Lower Manhattan. Lisa Rosner, CBS News, New York.
Meanwhile, on the immigration front, a federal judge slammed the Trump administration on Tuesday, saying they acted in bad faith by not providing information about why they deported a Maryland father to El Salvador. Now, she set a deadline for 6 p.m. Eastern today to turn in those details. Earlier, Trump-appointed border czar Tom Homan spoke on the judge's wording, and he also doubled down on the deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Take a listen to that.
Bad faith. We removed an MS-13 gang member, public safety threat, wife beater, designated terrorist from the United States. He's home. He's a citizen of El Salvador, a native El Salvador, who had due process, despite what you're hearing, been ordered removed by 2 separate immigration judges. The best that could happen for him if he actually gave back to the United States, he would be detained and removed again.
All right, let's bring in CBS News immigration and politics reporter Camila Montoya Galvez. Camila, great to see you. We just heard that pushback from Homan. Can you give us some more context, though, as to what the judge overseeing Abrego Garcia's case actually said?
Hi, Liz. The legal battle over Kilmar Abrego Garcia and his wrongful deportation to El Salvador and his imprisonment there in that mega prison in that country continues to get more complicated by the hour. The Justice Department has just filed today a request for the judge overseeing this case in Maryland to suspend for a week, for 7 days, 2 items in that case. The first item is the discovery process that she ordered for the government to provide more details through a discovery process as well as testimony to attest to what, if any, steps the administration, Liz, is taking to quote-unquote facilitate the return of this man who was living in Maryland with his wife and their U.S. citizen child. And the second item is also the daily updates that the judge in that same case had mandated that the government provide every single day again as to the whereabouts of Mr. Abrego Garcia. We learned a few days ago, of course, that Mr. Abrego Garcia was transferred away from that mega prison known as Cede and into a different detention facility in El Salvador. But we have received very few details from the government as to his whereabouts and what steps the administration is now undertaking to get the government in El Salvador to release him. Because, as you know, Liz, the argument now, the main legal argument that the Justice Department is making in federal court is that the U.S. is currently powerless to do anything in this case because this man is now in the custody of a foreign country.
Okay, I want to talk about 2 other immigration cases that we're keeping an eye on. The first one of Columbia graduate Mahmoud Khalil and Tufts University graduate student Rumeysa Ozturk. Now, a Democratic congressional delegation visited the 2 in the Louisiana ICE detention facilities on Tuesday. Here's what they had to say.
We met today with Mahmoud Khalil. We just met with Rumeysa Ozturk. Both of them are right now being imprisoned here in Louisiana. They are not being charged with a crime. There is no evidence that could convict them of a crime. ICE just feels, through the Trump administration, that they have a right to take people from across our country and to put them into facilities like this here in Louisiana.
Okay, Camilla, let's break down each case. Do we know what these members of Congress talked about with Mahmoud Khalil, and what's the next step in his particular case?
Hi, Liz. In the case of Mr. Khalil, he remains detained at an ICE detention facility in Louisiana. Earlier in April, I attended his immigration court hearing inside of that detention facility in a rural part of the state, and a judge by the Justice Department was able to find him deportable under one of the legal grounds that the Trump administration has invoked to justify his detention, and that is a determination by Secretary of State Marco Rubio that concluded that Mr. Khalil's presence and activities in the U.S. threatened the foreign policy interests of the U.S. government. And the lawyers for Mr. Khalil, Liz, had until today to file any relief applications to prevent that deportation from happening under that legal conclusion made by Secretary of State Marco Rubio. That could come in the form of asylum or other protections from deportation. If the lawyers make this application, which we expect will happen, Liz, then this will trigger a court hearing and a court battle over whether he merits asylum or any other protection from deportation. In the case of the other Columbia student, Mr. Madawi, he remains detained in another ICE detention facility in Vermont. During a hearing today, a federal judge in that state did not rule on this case, but under another ruling that this same judge issued earlier in April, Mr. Madawi cannot be deported from the U.S., nor can he be removed from the state of Vermont. So he will continue to remain in federal custody, and the same law is being used to justify his detention. The government is arguing, Liz, that his presence here threatens the foreign policy interests of the government. We have, of course, we should underscore, not received any evidence yet to support that argument by the Trump administration.
Okay, what about another case, the Tufts University student, Ozturk? What did the delegation talk about in her case, and what are the next steps?
Well, the delegation of Democratic lawmakers who were able to talk to Mrs. Ozturk and Mr. Khalil said that Mrs. Ozturk is not in a good health situation there in that detention facility in Louisiana, that her health has been deteriorating, and that the detention by ICE has had an adverse health impact on her. And so they are asking for the government to release her. The administration has provided very few details as to why it is currently detaining this Tufts University student. They have not cited the same law that has been used in the other cases that we just spoke about to detain her. And it is important to underscore that she is in a slightly different legal situation than Khalil and Mr. Madawi, because she was not a green card holder or a permanent resident. She was here on a student visa, which is easier for the government to terminate based on their broad discretion when it comes to student visas.
Camilo Montoyo Galvez, thank you so much, Camilo. Well, a very high-profile departure coming to Capitol Hill, the Senate seat, the key Senate seat that's about to open up. Stay with us right here on CBS News 24/7. Welcome back to CBS News 24/7. Illinois Senator and Minority Whip Dick Durbin made a major announcement just moments ago. He is retiring from his elected position and will not seek re-election. Let's bring in CBS News correspondent Chanel Call, who is following this breaking news from our newsroom. Chanel, what can you tell us about the senator's announcement?
Well, about 2 hours ago, 80-year-old Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois sent out a video on X announcing that he will not be seeking re-election. Listen.
The decision of whether to run for re-election has not been easy. I truly love the job of being United States Senator, but in my heart, I know it's time to pass the torch. So I'm announcing today that I will not be seeking re-election at the end of my term. The people of Illinois have honored me with this responsibility longer than anyone elected to the Senate in our state's history. I'm truly grateful.
And this is notable because Durbin is someone who's been representing Illinois for more than 4 decades now. He is the 5th Senate term. In his 5th Senate term, I should say. He's also the chamber's number 2 Democrat. This is someone who is a career politician. He's known for things like helping to ban indoor smoking. He also helped shape President Barack Obama's early career. This open seat is now going to set up a pretty competitive race in Illinois, although we should mention this state has grown to be more solidly Democratic. Republicans have only captured a Senate seat twice for a 6-year term in 1984, since 1984.
And Chanel, you're also keeping an eye on another breaking story, another town hall, a heated town hall meeting held by U.S. Senator Charles Grassley. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Grassley is on what he's calling a 99 counties tour. Today, he stopped by the small town of Northwood, Iowa. This is about 20 minutes from the Minnesota border. It was a full house here. The small town hall was packed with people, some of them frustrated by this administration.
Proposed tax cuts, which will benefit overwhelmingly billionaires, do not fund the services Americans need.
And we should mention just last week during another town hall that also took place in Iowa, there was a room full of frustrated Iowans who were basically urging Senator Grassley to stand up to President Donald Trump and push back against this executive branch.
All right, CBS News correspondent Chanel Call, thank you so much. All right, let's take you to Texas now, where the city of Uvalde has reached a settlement with the families of the Robb Elementary School mass shooting. The attorneys representing the families did not give the exact terms of the deal reached, but they did ask for police to boost training. They also requested the city to regularly clean the cemetery where many of the victims are buried. The shooting took place in May of 2022. 2 teachers and 19 students were killed in that attack. Over now to Florida State University, where thousands of students signed a petition to make immediate changes to campus safety. One specific change they want to make: manually locking classroom doors from the inside. Students say they panicked when they realized doors would not lock when they tried to find shelter inside the nearest classrooms. Now, Florida State's Office of University Communications issued a statement saying the school is, quote, continually reviewing and assessing our security protocols, including evaluating door locks to ensure the safety of everyone on campus. All right, coming up, the push to pardon country music star Jelly Roll, how a parole board just granted him a big win. We're watching CBS News 24/7. Country music star Jelly Roll is one step closer to receiving a pardon for crimes he committed when he was younger. The Tennessee Parole Board recommended a pardon just yesterday. They issued a non-binding unanimous resolution after a holding hearing for the 40-year-old Nashville native, whose real name is Jason DeFord. He says he spent most of the years between the ages of 14 and 25 behind bars. His most serious convictions were for robbery and drug charges. Jelly Roll first became a rapper in prison before then blending his skills with country music, which earned him 4 Grammy nominations in February. These days, he often visits prisons, rehab programs, and schools and says he wants to share a message of redemption. Now, Sheriff Darren Hall in Nashville posted pictures with the country music star online, and he wrote that he asked Governor Billy Lee to grant Jelly Roll a full pardon last year, and the decision is now in the governor's hands. And our CBS News social media team has so much great content, including this. CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger explains the government's move to start collecting payments on student loans in default and what it could mean for millions of Americans. Take a look.
The Department of Education has announced some bad news for those student loan borrowers who are currently in default. So there's about 5.3 million people who are late on their student loan repayments. And of course, these student loan repayments have been in flux for about 5 years since COVID. Now the Department of Ed says they are coming after the money that's owed to them. They say they are going to actually garnish wages, maybe take that tax refund if you're due one, and potentially, if you work for the government, take your wages right from the government in order to get repaid on those loans. I think this is just terrible news. It's not a ton of notice. I know it's 30 days, but doesn't seem like a lot after things have been frozen for 5 years. We know that the Department of Ed is also reporting late payments and these defaults to credit rating agencies. So if you are one of those folks who has not been paying, try your best to at least get something going. It's really hard to do, and a lot of those repayment plans, they're in flux for millions of other borrowers. But I think the Department of Education has really put us on notice. And of course, since they're cutting about half the staff there, it's going to be even harder to get this information. Try to stay on top of this as best you can. Go to the studentaid.gov website. Try just to automatically make some payments. Every little bit will help. May 5th, it's around the corner. Sorry, gang.
Well, our social media team has so much great content just like this on our TikTok and Instagram pages, so please follow us at the handle CBS News. All right, let's take a live look from Kansas City, Missouri, where we are tracking the potential for strong storms this week. I'm going to bring in Jessica Birch. Where are the storm systems right now?
Well, for the most part, it's just these afternoon thunderstorms that are going to start popping up throughout these communities. You see calm mornings with gusty afternoons and thunderstorm afternoons widespread from Texas all the way up into the Dakotas. That's going to push to the south and off into the Midwest and eventually the Mid-Atlantic into the coming days. So I'm actually going to pull it up right now just to kind of show you throughout the next 48 hours. So you take a look below me. This is what we're gearing up for. It's kind of originated just from Texas, but it continues to become more widespread as we head into the coming days. Notice how it's on and off thunderstorms anywhere from areas like Oklahoma over into Arkansas, eventually stretching up into the Northeast right around the corner as we creep closer to this weekend's forecast. Take a look behind me. I'll time this out for you right now. Today, heading into the next couple days, we're gearing up for on and off thunderstorms. We're gearing up for potential for hail and even a chance for damaging winds too. Once this comes up behind me, I'll show you that picture in just a second. Here we go. Let's time this out from Texas all the way up into Kansas. Here we go into the evening hours tonight. All throughout the south, we'll see on and off showers in the forecast too. In total, we could get close to around 2 to 3 inches of rain from this exact system. You take a look at our severe weather outlook for today. It's highlighting most of Texas up into Kansas, all the way over into portions of Missouri too. Damaging winds are expected there. We could gust anywhere up to around 50, 60 miles per hour. And then as we take a look at our severe weather outlook for tomorrow, it's highlighting the same communities. So in total, like I said, we can see close to around 2 to 3 inches of rain from these systems moving in. It's just the inconvenient spring-like thunderstorms that we're dealing with right now, and that's just widespread throughout all the South.
It can be hard to make plans.
Oh yeah,
when you know there's always a chance of rain. You got those soccer games, you got those other sports games.
Absolutely.
All right, Jess, thanks so much.
Of course.
All right, let's take you back now to inside St. Peter's Basilica in Rome at the Vatican, where people there paying their respects to Pope Francis. But the Pope's death has spurred interest in a movie about a very secretive papal tradition. We check out what it got wrong and what it got very right. That's coming up on CBS News 24/7. All right, let's take you back to the Vatican today as Pope Francis lies in state inside St. Peter's Basilica there. Thousands of people have been lining up in St. Peter's Square, some waiting even hours just to enter the Basilica, where Francis's open casket has been set in front of the main altar. He will lie in state until Saturday when his funeral ceremony begins. And that will be held in St. Peter's Square before then being moved to his final resting place at the Basilica of St. Mary Major. Now, in his final testament, Pope Francis asked to be buried in the earth, simple, without particular decoration. CBS News senior correspondent Nora O'Donnell is in Rome.
Good afternoon from here in Rome. We just actually came back from St. Peter's Square, where we were talking to just some of the thousands of people who have come out today to wait in long lines to pay their respects to Pope Francis, who will lie in state for some 3 days inside St. Peter's Basilica. One person all the way from Mexico said they were here because Pope Francis changed her life and changed the world. We had the privilege of a private viewing of Pope Francis last night in his home at Casa Santa Marta, in the chapel there where he used to pray every single day. I just want to take you inside the room because it was just an extraordinary moment. It was silent. We were just feet away from the Pope. At one point you could hear a little girl crying, but other than that, people wanted to say goodbye, nuns and priests and people who work in the Vatican. And as we left, we were given this prayer card from Pope Francis, a way to remember him in these final days, as many people are coming here to remember him. The state funeral is still planned for Saturday with leaders from all around the world, including President Trump, President Zelenskyy of Ukraine. Prince William will also be here in St. Peter's Square for this final funeral mass. I'm Nora O'Donnell for CBS News in Rome.
But we will bring you the funeral of Pope Francis on Saturday in a CBS News special report. Coverage begins at 4 a.m. Eastern, 1 a.m. Pacific on CBS News and streaming right here on CBS News 24/7 and Paramount Plus. Now I want to take you to a crisis happening underwater. Scientists say 84% of the world's coral have been impacted by devastating mass bleaching, the worst of its kind in recorded history. The International Coral Reef Initiative made the announcement today, and they are blaming record high ocean temperatures for turning colorful coral reefs essentially pale, bleaching them, getting rid of all the algae inside of them that the corals use as a food source.
We're looking at something that's completely changing the face of our planet and the ability of our oceans to sustain lives and livelihoods.
Here's the thing, corals are key to seafood production, tourism, and protecting coastlines from erosion. So that raises the question, what can be done about this? Well, efforts are underway to conserve and restore the coral reefs. One project off the coast of Florida rescues corals and then nurses them back to health before returning them to the ocean. But scientists say it'll take getting to the heart of the problem by fighting climate change to save them. Now to an invasion from underground. Cicadas are poised to return at some point in the spring of 2025, potentially bringing billions with a B, of the very noisy bugs to neighborhoods across the eastern United States. Yeah, you've probably heard that sound before. Now, these cicadas emerge from the ground once every 17 years. The CBS News data team created an interactive map that shows exactly where they are expected to show up. The map uses information from the University of Connecticut's Cicada Project. There's a map there. Cicadas will likely be concentrated in Kentucky and also much of Tennessee. The insects are also expected to show up in parts of Georgia, Illinois, Indiana, North Carolina, Virginia, and West Virginia. Now, in warmer states, cicadas usually come out in late April or May. We're going to keep an eye on that. We'll have much more ahead right here on CBS News 24/7. Lindsay Reiser takes over next.